Hello out there in YouTube land.
Welcome back to our channel.
Today we thought we'd have a bit of a discussion about our top 10 most disgusting, horrible to watch movies ever.
The things that really get under our skin and just disturb us.
And just, they're not easy to watch, they're not enjoyable to watch.
A little back, we get these plans.
Yes.
So the second we find out there is a challenging movie to get, we want to see it. Especially if it's in the horror genre.
So, I mean, basically, we have to have this preface that these aren't movies that we recommend watching whatsoever. They're gross. They're not easy to stomach. We've seen them for the sole purpose of the fact that we view film as a medium for art. And, right. You know, we're amateur film historians, basically. We've watched just about anything you can think of. And so, you know, some of these are part of prestigious lists like the Criterion Collection. You know, and in general, art isn't always beautiful.
Right, and it's not always something that can be stomached easily.
And, you know, especially when an artist decides to do something that's like a political statement or something, right. They, on purpose, make a film or a piece of art that is not easily stomached to make a point.
And when they want to really bring out the depravity or the darker, seedy underbelly of human culture and human society, this is their medium. This is how they show this. And it is not for everybody.
No, absolutely not. I mean...
And some of these, you know, it has taken turning it off.
And taken days for us to recover from watching it. I mean, it's not...
I think I've had nightmares with a few of them for, you know, a good solid week.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, and like the heebie-jeebies, and
right.
Some of it's just bad.
So, diving right in.
Yes.
Since I'm the scientist.
Yes.
So, the first thing we want to talk about is a film that was out in 2011. And it's called The Skin I Live In. And it starred Antonio Banderas. And he was playing Dr. Ledgard. And in this one, he's a mad scientist. And he's enacting revenge. And this is kind of that darker human nature. And he's acting revenge because of his wife and daughter's tragic deaths by a particular young man who caused his daughter's suicide. So now we're getting elements of revenge and suicide. Mm-hmm. And how exactly does he do this? He forces a gender reassignment on his victim. And he is not fast about it.
No.
It's brutal.
And, you know, the things that the young man has to go through dealing with being not falsely, but forced into becoming a whole different gender that can't be reversed.
Right.
You can imagine the psychological implications of that, and how horrific of a thing that would be.
It was not only revenge, it was breaking a person.
Yeah, completely.
Completely, you know, broken. And that one is almost one of the more mild ones on this list.
Yes, actually. It's not too graphic, which is a saving grace, I will say.
The brutality comes from realizing kind of that psychological element to it.
Yes.
And it really gets into your head.
The next wonderful film on our list is called Begotten. And it was shot completely black and white. It's known as the first film by the guy who directed Shadow the Vampire.
Right.
Which was the whole reason I wanted to watch this film in the first place. But the black and white actually adds to the horror of this one because it is very atmospheric. You know, scenes where God disembowels himself, kind of gives you a pretty good idea how the rest of the movie goes. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get into too intense of a description because it's just...
No.
It's not easy to watch.
A disemboweling, even in black and white, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty at all. And then we get into something a bit more depraved. We decided to watch I Spit on Your Grave. That was a film from 1978. What really makes this one difficult is there's a whole extensive, long rape scene, and it's graphic. And that is almost juxtapositioned with revenge sequences. And that one makes it incredibly difficult to watch because you have an element of just violence.
Yes, and it goes on for like 45 minutes.
Yes.
It's a horrifically long time to have almost uninterrupted violence on screen.
Right, and that one is particularly difficult because of that violence.
Yes.
You almost feel like you need to crawl out of your skin
yes.
during it a few times.
It's not for someone who isn't used to watching extreme horror films.
Right.
The next movies we're going to talk about are the Human Centipede films. And they're notorious, of course, for good reason. We're grouping them all together because they play off each other. So if you're not familiar with the premise, a mad scientist decides to create a human centipede by connecting his victims together from mouth to anus and seeing if they will live. And each film increases the size of the centipede, basically. I really don't think I need to elaborate too much more. You can kind of figure out how all that goes. It's just gross.
It brings out the creepy crawly germaphobe factor as well as the sadistic human.
Yeah, completely.
Being. So then we kind of transition to something that, by its sheer nature, makes people uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And that's the 1987 film of Necromantic. Mm-hmm. And there's only a few things to say about Necromantic. It is a movie about necrophilia. It is highly graphic, and it will get in your mind.
Yes.
And make you feel squidgy and uncomfortable for days.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Next movie is Ichi the Killer from 2004. It was an adaptation of a manga series of the same name. To give you an idea, people were handed vomit bags in the theater when they went to watch it.
So you can imagine how that went.
Yeah.
I would be worried if somebody handed me a vomit bag before I walked into a movie.
I kind of have two responses. One, is this a marketing ploy? Or two, am I really screwed?
Am I going to need this? That's about where it is.
Yeah.
You know, what do you do with that? And that kind of brings us into 2002. And again, we talk more about this cultural ideal of rape. Mm-hmm. And the movie is called Irreversible. And it's actually told in a backwards fashion. And a woman, essentially the premise is a woman is brutally raped during an evening in Paris. And it's told backwards. So from the end to the beginning. And it's just...
It is a horrifically hard film to watch.
It is horrifically hard for just about every level on the emotional side of it.
Yeah.
It's something that is one of those you maybe get through the whole thing, maybe watch once, and you just put it away.
Yeah, then you don't touch it again.
Because you know what it is, and you've been there, done that.
Yep. Next movie is Audition from 2001. And basically, a widower decides to audition a new wife under the false guise of making a movie. He becomes obsessed with a young woman. The torture scenes in this film are pretty beyond the pale. If you're a fan of Japanese horror, then you undoubtedly know this film very well. It is gruesome, it is graphic, and it will stay with you for a while.
Yeah, it will. Another one that we have on our list is Martyrs.
Martyrs.
And that one I have not actually seen all of. It's a girl who was horrifically abused, and she decides she's going to go on a killing spree. So when she's stopped by a secret society, they have all new horrors for her. And that would have been worse than the initial abuse.
Yeah, I mean, it was remade for American audiences, and they toned it down quite a bit. The original French version is an experience. It is an ugly film. I think that would be the easiest way to describe it.
And it talks, it hits on the choice of an abused person. It hits on killing. It hits on further torture.
Yeah.
And it's all ugly.
Yeah. Next, we're going to talk about Cannibal Holocaust from 1980. Now, this is, part of the Italian cannibal movie craze. It's very graphic. There's a scene where a poor turtle is killed on camera that's real. And I don't know 100% for sure because I don't know the history of it, but I'm sure that was one of the reasons why PETA got involved with animal rights, trying to prevent the deaths of animals in films.
Not that we endorse any...
No, absolutely not.
That, but that's where a lot of that started. This was before you had the laws in place for animal welfare.
And, thank goodness we've come a long way. But, this movie was so extreme that the director was charged with obscenity and murder because he had actually requested that the actors stay completely under the radar until the movie was released to add to the realism, which, well, it was so realistic they thought that the director had actually killed all the actors, and the actors had to come into an Italian court to get the guy out of prison.
And that tells you everything you need to know about Cannibal Holocaust and how realistic it was.
Yes.
That brings us to number 9.
Yeah.
And that's a Serbian film. That was 2011.
Ooh, buddy.
This movie, if I told you and Dani told you the others are not easy to watch, this one takes the cake from those.
It's almost like you kind of have a leap from what's horrible to what is horrific.
And pretty much there's nothing like tricking a man into making a snuff film. That's how you can describe this. This movie is still banned in countries, and where it isn't, most of the copies are edited. You do not get an original copy of this.
I mean, you might be able to find one on a torrent stream or something like that, but it is...
horrific.
Yes. I mean, it's a very difficult film to watch.
It's yet again one of those that just makes your skin crawl for days. Days on end.
Yes. And that brings us to our final film, which was from 1975. Also, it is part of the Criterion Collection. It is Solo, or 121 Days of Sodom. Now, Sodom, sorry. It was loosely based on a book written by the Marquis de Sade. Should kind of give you an idea of where we're going with this. The director wanted to make a political statement about the situation going on during the Nazi regime in Italy during World War II. And, this, in our opinion, is the most disgusting and hard to watch movie ever made. It shows just about every single form of perversion you can come up with. And it's a germaphobe's nightmare, truly. There are scenes where actors play like they're eating feces.
And that just...
That should answer every single thing you have.
Yes.
It is... I had a turned stomach for about 2 weeks after watching it. We'll just say that.
Yeah. You and I talked about that. It's just still sick. Still can't look at this. Still can't think about it.
Mm-mm.
And actually sitting here thinking about it, I'm crawling.
Yeah, I got goose pimples and I'm just... Ugh.
That is not something that, again, any of these movies I really don't recommend that you watch.
But this one in particular, really, really, really think hard before you go there.
We watched it all the way through and just, it was bad.
Yeah.
It took everything not to turn it off.
And the only reason we stuck with it literally was because it's part of the Criterion Collection, which, as movie buffs know, the Criterion Collection is the, top collection of art films that should be preserved. So that was literally the only reason why we finished it.
And truly, the only reason I can see of this being preserved was because it was such a political statement of the time.
Yes.
It was meant to be the state of how this artist saw Italy in World War II and what was going on.
And how the government reacted to things and the atrocities. So, for that reason, I can understand why it is considered a work of art. But it is... It
is not the unicorns and bunny rabbits work of art.
No, this is more along the lines of the worst thing that you can visually see without being in war yourself.
Right.
I truly think that was probably the way you can describe that film.
Yeah.
It's just a horrific, horrible, horrible to watch film.
So those are the ones that we find horribly disturbing, and we do have some that kind of are in the middle with this, but these are our
top of the crust films. You can talk about movies like Green Inferno being very controversial in terms of whether Eli Roth did or did not get the tribe that he filmed, their full idea of how the film was made.
Right.
Things like that. However, it was not anywhere near as bad as all of these. These are, without a doubt, the top 10 heebie-jeebie movies.
These are the ones that you will have nightmares.
Yes.
Watching, or you will think about. They will invade your mind for weeks after.
Yeah.
And not in a good way.
I don't think you can forget them.
No. No, once seen, you don't forget these.
No.
Ever.
You'll never forget the name of them. You won't remember who stars in them. You won't remember the name of the director, but you'll remember the title and you'll remember what the movie's about and say, no.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. These are not the grab the popcorn. This is actually grab your vomit bag.
Yeah, and
your
maybe
favorite,
a pillow,
your
stuffed animal,
stuffed animal,
something. Maybe have a friend with you that's willing to go through this so you're not watching this alone.
Right.
And worrying about your mental state because you're watching it.
And as a small disclaimer, we don't think that any of the themes in these movies are acceptable in society.
No. And, for that reason also is why film and art and books that have these things in them are important, in that these films should disturb you. They should give you a horrific feeling. You're not supposed to have a happy time watching them.
Right.
They're a statement of how bad some human beings can be to other human beings.
Right. And just how depraved that, the seedy underbelly of the world really kind of is.
Yeah.
So
we'll kind of leave you on that gritty note. We'll have more fun movies and things to talk about in the future.
Right.
But we really enjoyed having you with us to go through our top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.